12 years ago, NAVID as an organization conceptualized an event that was going to be a melting point and a gathering of all stakeholders to address issues that have to do with persons with disabilities. When it started 11 years ago, we didn't know how far we're going to go. But this is 12 years later and countless of impacts made in several lives. It is my delight to welcome you to this 12th edition. My name is Bugi Okoemoy, and I'm going to be part of those directing proceedings for today's event. Of course, I'm not alone here. I'd like to make welcome and introduce my guest, my co-compare who's going to be joining me to coordinate today's event.
A wonderful afternoon to us all. My name is Joyce Daniels, and I'm happy to be home. A human rights activist, a pro-democracy campaigner, senior advocate of Nigeria, officer of the Order of the Niger. He is the senior advocate of the masses, the senior advocate of NAVID, voice of the people, senior advocate of Nigerian students, notary public of Nigeria, patriot and pan-African author, a possessor of profound oratorical skills that we desire to achieve and attain to, public affairs analyst, and a Knight of the Order of Saint Mulumba. He has come across 7 seas and 7 mountains to be here today, in spite of the crazy weather situations that tried to hold him back earlier. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our keynote address speaker for today, the one and the only friend and father of NAVID, Chief Professor A.A Ozekhome. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, my brothers and sisters. Thank you, His Excellency, the Governor of Edo State, my own brother and friend, Godwin Obaseki. Let me welcome my own brother and friend, Chief Judge of Edo State, Honorable Justice Okumbowa, ably represented here by my own sister, aging backwards, so much that I did not know I was sitting by her, the Honorable Justice Geraldine Imadegbelo, the beautiful gazelle wife of my own brother and friend, Imadegbelo Godalo, senior advocate of Nigeria. Let me specifically note the various commissioners of government here, particularly the Commissioner for Social Development, Gender Inclusion, who's here with us, and the other ones. Honorable Justice Peter, who has retired, but is not tired, always with us. Sibo, we thank you, sir, for continuously, and continuing to be with us. My own brother, with whom we were in the trenches together, the 80s and 90s, when those who are currently messing up our democracy and democratic experimentation were running away abroad or hiding behind the backs of their wives. We were in the trenches. We were beaten. Some of us were killed. Some were maimed. Some were disabled. But some of us stood steadfast, believing in the national cause. That man is here with us today, Dr. Osage Obayiwana, former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Edo State. I thank you that the struggle that we embarked on over 30 years ago, it is too late now to surrender. We cannot begin to learn how to be left-handed in old age. So it is a case of forward ever and backward never. I thank all of you for inviting me over. But perhaps the most important person here that we must give a lot of gratitude to, exceptional gratitude, is our own Melody Omosa, who organized this beautiful event. He got so much on my neck that his music was no longer melodious. We've been speaking for more than 4 months, and guess what? I only got to know last week, just last week, that he is visually impaired. So you can see that you are in a position to be able, from a situation of disability. That man, not in any way disabled at all. Many of you here, you may think, as they derogatorily term you, you may think you are disabled. You are not in any way disabled. Let me give you some little quotes to let you know why my argument today that you are not disabled. And why I'm going to tear into smithereens the very practices, government policies, lack of enforcement of laws that have been put in place to enable you to be abled, but are honored more in breach than in observance. So let me give you some quotes today. Believe you can, and you are halfway there. Believe you can, and you are halfway there. That was by Theodore Roosevelt, a former American president. Obama, a grandchild, a grandson of African pedigree, the grandson of a cattle rearer, Kenya, believed that he could. He was disabled as a black American because of the color or pigmentation of his skin. But he started his slogan, "Yes, I can." So he was tearing to pieces the stereotype, the fixation that a black American would not be president. He believed he could. So he did. So there is a popular saying that Miss Rosa Parks, the woman who started the civil rights movement in America, when the segregated bus was occupying the whites in front and the blacks at the back, and they came to him and they told her to stand up. She said she was too tired. She couldn't stand up for the white people. They dragged the poor woman down, dragged her on the floor. That led to the first major spark of the civil rights movement. So there is that saying, therefore, that Rosa Parks sat so that Martin Luther King Jr. walked. Martin Luther King Jr. walked so that Obama could run. Obama ran so that our children could fly. I therefore believe and agree with Robert Hensel that I choose not to put this, DIS, to my ability. So all of you here who had either to consider yourself disabled, tell yourself, remove that DIS, and you will see that you are abled. So disability, adding that this, is a mere human or natural made obstacle, a hurdle put in your front so as to stop you from growing your potentials. Watch the hurdler when he or she is doing the hurdles. She comes forward, she sees hurdles. What does she do or he do? She lifts up to climb the hurdles, then comes down. As soon as she comes down, she sees another hurdle telling her not to go forward. She says, nay, I am going forward. She lifts it again. She continues to leap the hurdles until the final hurdle. And guess what? Do you always watch them? When she reaches the final hurdle, she looks back. She smiles. She's taunting and mocking the hurdles. Now you see, you couldn't stop me in getting to where I am going to. That should be your case. So remove that "this" from your name or from your appellation. I do not see you as disabled. It is the society that we live in that deliberately make us to feel so. I flew in from Lagos this morning. When we got to Benin, I met a young lady. She may be here with us. She wasn't walking on complete clutches, but on one stick, supporting stick. She found difficulty in walking. I shook my head because at the foot of the aircraft, there was no wheelchair to carry that young lady, to help her to the arrival hall. You will never see that happen abroad. And these are leaders who misgovern the system, who pollute the system, who desecrate the system, who desecrate and urinate into the Augean table. They all travel abroad. They see these things. They come back here. They subject them to harrowing experience. I am against that. All of us should be against that. Abled does not mean enabled, and disabled does not mean less abled. Do you know what that great famous musician said, Steve Wonder? He said, just because a man lacks the use of the eyes doesn't mean he lacks vision. Do you get that? The fact that you cannot use your eyes does not mean you lack vision. No. Some of the most perceptive people on earth have been people who did not have physical eyes. That is why their sensory organs are more developed than you and I that believe we can see. If a blind person were to come here and there's darkness, he will know when an intruder comes in. You and I may not know. They have developed this special extrasensory perception to guide them. Because self-preservation, the first law of nature. Sandy Fossil told us that life is about balance. Since I have only one leg, I understand that very well. Can you get that? Life is about balance. I realize I have only one leg. So I have learned to live with that. That is about balance. Without regrets, without recrimination. There's a great saying by Joel Raymond. He said, what I learned was that these athletes that come to the Olympics were not, that these athletes were not disabled. They were super abled. Because the Olympics is where heroes are made. But the Paralympics is where heroes come to. Can you see the difference? So all the athletic heroes we have seen, most of them were made at the Olympics. But for you to go to the Paralympics, it is because you are already a hero. So Paralympics is meant for heroes, while the Olympics is meant for learners and novices. I realized what Winston Churchill, that great World War II hero, once told us. And that has to do with my 22-page speech, which I will be speaking into, where he said, a good speech should be like a woman's skirt, long enough to cover the subject, but short enough to create more interest. Because of that, I'm not going to be like the man who came to deliver a lecture. When they started, there were about 1,000 people in the hall, just as this hall is full today. So he went on delivering the speech. He wouldn't stop. The crowd started thinning down. 1,000 to 800, 700, 500, 400, 350, 300, 200. 150, 100. He was still delivering his speech. 80, 70, 50, 30. The man would not stop his lecture. 20, 15, 10, 5. The man was still going on with his long lecture. 2. Then as he was rounding up, he looked up as I'm doing now and discovered that there was still one person sitting down. He said, I thank you for listening to my speech. The man said, I had no option than to wait because I'm the next speaker. So, what do we mean by disability? Let us look at World Health Organization, International Classification Functioning, Disability and Health, ICF. It says that disability is an umbrella term covering impairments, activity limitations, and participation restrictions. An impairment is a problem in body function or structure. An activity limitation is a difficulty encountered by an individual in executing a task or action, while a participation restriction is a problem experienced by an individual in involvement in life situations. The definition continues. Disability is thus not just a health problem. It is a complex phenomenon reflecting the interaction between features of a person's body and features of the society in which he or she lives. The UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, 2006, defines disability as persons with disabilities, including those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. This is echoed by the World Health Organization, WHO, and the World Bank. Both of them see disability as not being an attribute of a person. It's an attribute of a person. R. Jubel, the great writer in this area, says an impairment on its own would not lead to disability should there be a completely inclusive and comprehensively accessible environment. Such an environment, in his opinion, says Shaws, another great writer, would include addressing attitudinal barriers such as stereotypes, prejudices, and other forms of paternalistic and patronizing treatment. Hello? Disabled people don't need your sympathy. No, they don't need sympathy. Do you know what they need? They need empathy. Do you know the difference between sympathy and empathy? I will tell you. Sympathy is when you feel sorry for a person. Say, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for her, she's crippled. Oh, I'm sorry for him, he's blind. You're just sympathizing. You've done nothing about it. To be empathic, you have to be in the shoes of that person. You wear the shoes of that person. I give you an example. If a person were to fall into a pit, a sympathizer will simply come and look at the person I say, oh, I'm very sorry that this has happened to you. Oh my God, why did you allow him to fall into the pit? He goes. Another one comes, peeps, and says the same thing. But one who has empathy will come to the pit. He will throw in a rope, a life rope, a lifeline. He will tell the person, climb this rope and come up. If the person is struggling and he cannot climb the rope, he himself will enter inside that pit and then carry the person and help him first to get up, knowing that he, being able, will be able to manage to come out. That is empathy. So what we need for the disabled is not sympathy. Don't accept sympathy from anybody. What have they done to help you? What manner of society we see albinism as a disadvantage, as a form of disablement? Albinism? How? I think we should get over these stereotypes. Let's look at conditions of disability. World Health Organization and World Bank, they say disability encompasses impairments, activity limitations, and participation restrictions. While the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy says that disabilities are characterized by certain factors like deafness, blindness, paraplegia, diabetes, autism, depression, epilepsy, and HIV. So those of you who always tell people that they are disabled because they are blind or deaf or dumb or lame, many of you say that you have diabetes. Do you know that ordinary diabetes means you are also disabled? You don't know. With your diabetes, taking injections every day to put glucose into your blood, you don't know you are more disabled than that person that is blind? Hello? Everyone you see, don't be deceived, has one form of impairment or the other. Every of us here. It could be that you are coughing. It could be that you have a whitlow on your finger that is preventing you from sleeping. It could be that your urinary traction is not so strong and you are having urinary impairment. It could be that you have autism. It could be that you have HIV or diabetes. You could be having migraine. All these things I'm mentioning to you are forms of disablement. There's no one that is free from one form of ailment or the other. Only God Almighty is free. So the conditions for disability are congenital absence or adventitious loss of a limb or a sensory function, progressive neurological conditions like multiple sclerosis, chronic diseases like arteriosclerosis, inability or limited ability to perform such cognitive functions as remembering faces or calculating sums, and psychiatric disorders like schizophrenia and bipolar disorders. A lot of people do not know that forgetfulness is a form of disability. You just said something now, you say, oh, what did I say? Disability. Now, dimensions of disability could be medical or social. Social disability, in the words of Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, is relation between an individual and his or her social environment. The exclusion of people with certain physical and mental characteristics from major domains of social life. Their exclusion is manifested not only in deliberate segregation, such as Rosa Parks had in the US, but also in a built environment and organized social activity that precludes or restricts the participation of people seen or labeled as having disabilities. So that Rosa Parks experience at Montgomery, Alabama, in USA, which sparks of the civil rights movement, was segregational. The type of segregation that made the whites come to us to take us for slavery or for slave trade for over 500 years, leading to the emergence of the abolitionists. The abolitionists, including our own Olaido Equiano. People like Thomas Wilberson, Jackson, and the foremost American president, Abraham Lincoln, who promulgated the Abolition of Slavery Act, for which he was promptly murdered. That great American, who during his Gettysburg Declaration on the 19th of November, 1863, defined democracy as government of the people, for the people, and by the people. So this segregation is what really impairs the so-called disabled person. It is not the truism of the disablement itself. It is the societal perception, the way the society reacts with stares, with curiosity, with questions. I quickly took a look at your wonderful Edo State discrimination against persons with disability prohibition law. And at page 8 of the law, sorry, not page 8, at page, sorry, I just want to get that very page. I want to show you how wonderful a job you have done. When I saw it, I marveled, and I said, you are going to pay me, or maybe I will pay you for copying each other. Because some of them are virtually in my words. Page 16 of the law. But the most comprehensive definition of disability I've seen, even beyond the World Bank, the UN, the IMF, and the various authors. So I think Omosa did great research in bringing together an amalgam of these various definitions to have a more comprehensive and far-reaching definition. Page 16, last paragraph. Disability means a state of substantial impairment of the physical, visual, vocal, auditory, mental, intellectual, or sensory capabilities of a person, either at birth or by injury or sickness or its effect, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder full and effective participation in society on equal basis with others. I can assure you there's no even Encyclopedia Britannica, even my own form of Wikipedia or encyclopedia, which I've named Ozekhpedia, has this comprehensive definition. This is the most comprehensive definition I've seen. And guess what? The law, the Omosa-driven law, defines a person with disability to mean a person with long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on equal basis with others. I want you to see why I said maybe we were copying each other. You go to page 19 of the law, the first schedule, special facilities for people with disabilities, wheelchairs, clear floors or ground space on wheelchairs, wheelchair passage and turning space, crutches, guide canes, etc., hearing aids, curb camps, ramps, handrails, grab bars, stage shopping stairs, elevators and lifts, windows, entrance doors, drinking fountains and water dispenser, toilet facilities, door protective and reopening devices, maneuvering entrances are doors, parking spaces and passenger loading zones, accessible routes, including walkways, halls, windows, aisles, and spaces, alarms, audible, visual, and auxiliary. That again is the most comprehensive I have seen. I think all of you need to pick up a copy of this law, which I will encourage by donating to this your association the sum of 500,000 naira. To buy 10 copies of the law. Is the most comprehensive in my research on this matter. The definition, the restrictions, the segregation, the solution, in such a small, compact form, before you now talked about the commission that you set up to drive the process. So, what is the legal framework for this? The main laws and statutes are the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended, the Nigerians with Disabilities Decree 1993, the National Policy on Disability in Nigeria 2017, the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act of 2018, the disability protection laws enacted by many states in Nigeria, including now the Edo State Disability Law of 2022. As I saw it, I thought it was 2023. Then the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. But the 1999 Constitution didn't go much. It just merely states in Section 42 that a Nigerian citizen of a particular community, ethnic group, place or origin, sex, religion, or political opinion shall not by reason of only that be subjected expressly or in practical application of any law enforced in Nigeria or any executive or administrative action of the government to disabilities or restrictions on which citizens of Nigerians of other communities, ethnic groups, places of origin, sex, are entitled to. So it didn't specifically isolate any portion for disabled people. Say, no citizen of Nigeria shall be subjected to any disability or deprivation merely by reason of the circumstances of his birth. That is the nearest to it. That's subsection 2 of section 42. By reason of the circumstances of his birth. Or circumstances of his birth could be just poverty, being an orphan, not necessarily being disabled, being lame, being deaf, being dumb, being blind. So Constitution falls short of it. And those in charge, the National Assembly, of amending our Constitution, should look into it as the ground norm of the country, to critically look at it. In my research, Mrs. Folashade Ali, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, daughter of legal icon and living legend, Chief Afe Babalola, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, the founder of Afe Babalola University, Ado-Ekiti, did a lot of works in this area. I seem to agree with her in many of them because she looked at many of these issues. Let me take some of these issues one by one. Education rights. All public schools, whether primary, secondary, or tertiary, are required to have at least one personnel trained to cater for the educational development of persons with disabilities, or special facilities for the effective education of persons with disabilities. Public schools are also required to include Braille, sign language, and other skills for communicating with persons with... Hello? In all the schools in Edo State, apart from maybe the special school, do you have these facilities here? Not just in Edo State, all over Nigeria. They just build a school for everybody. How the lame comes there, how the blind survives, how the deaf survives, nobody cares. Healthcare rights. Government is to guarantee persons with disabilities to have unfettered access to adequate health care without discrimination on the basis of disability. Also, persons with mental disability are entitled to free medical and health service in all public institutions. Then, public officers are to ensure provision for special communication where a patient with communicational disabilities is being medically attended to. Have you seen any of that in any Nigerian hospital? Have you seen any? Me, I have not seen. That you come to a hospital and they say these are special facilities for disabled people, and that the disabled people should come for free treatment and then go home. Do you have it? Accessibility rights, which this Edo State law very much provides for. The Act, the Nigerian Act of 2018, provides for accessibility aids for disabled persons in public buildings, roads and sidewalks, and public transportation. The law even prohibits government agencies involved in issuing building permits from approval where they do not make special plans for accessibility. Have you ever gone to Edogis or any place in Edo State or any state in Nigeria where you see a building plan or the Ministry of Housing, where you see a building plan being disallowed because they have not made special provisions for blind alleys, for areas where people who are disabled can move freely with their wheelchairs. Have you seen any law like that being enforced in any part of Nigeria? Have you seen any? And these people travel abroad. Abroad, Just take London here, for example. The municipal bus, that one that is a double decker. When you go in, there are special chairs meant for disabled persons. You dare not sit there. If you sit there, it's a criminal offense. You may be arrested. Or they will just issue you a ticket and fine you. When they are going to board aircraft, you will see the wheelchairs of disabled persons brought forward. They and little babies are given preeminence. But here, like the commissioner noted earlier, you will see disabled people standing laboriously or even on their wheelchairs while more able-bodied persons are rushing into an aircraft when it should be the other way around. And I'm happy that the Edo State law has provided for various penalties ranging from 50,000 naira fine or imprisonment to 200,000 to 250,000, or with both fine and imprisonment for breaches of these provisions. Employment rights. Persons with disabilities constitute at least 5% of our unemployment rate. Persons with disability are to constitute at least 5% in any place of employment. At least 5%. So if you have 1,000 employees, persons with disability are to be at least 50. Have you seen that happen in any part of Nigeria? They don't even give them jobs. They don't give many of them jobs, most of them. And a person in breach is to be liable on conviction to nominal damages payable to the affected person. Let us look at right to first consideration in queues and emergencies. At the 2005 National Conference, where I was the leader of the civil society at that conference, we were at Transcorp Hilton one day, and the alarm sounded. And everybody started running. Kata, 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 kata. Each person running for his or her dear life. There was this young lady who was participating at the conference on the on the ages of persons living with disability. She was on crutches. A young Yoruba lady. I can't remember her name now. 2005 is quite some time. That's about 18 years ago. Or something like Omolade or Lolade. And as we were all running down the stairs, I saw her. And I said, let me pick you up. Let me carry you on my shoulder so that we run downstairs. She looked at me and smiled. I said, no, sir. I'm not disabled. I'm abled. I will gradually take it myself. I was shocked at the heart of this lioness. You didn't want me to help you when everybody is running for his or her dear life? He said, no. I will make it, and God will save me. So thrilled was I that I made up my mind I wasn't going to leave her alone, since she wouldn't let me carry her. I decided to walk gradually by her. Because once there is an alarm, no one is allowed to take the steps. And I can't remember the floor we were in. It was quite one of the highest floors. So I decided to walk gradually by her. I said, well, if in the process we die and we get burnt, I'm sure I will see God's face. He will know that I died, helping a less privileged one instead of running away. How many of us can do that? Not many of us. Self-preservation being the first law of nature, you will first take off and tell the young lady, bye-bye. Oh. Prohibition of segregation, have dealt with that a lot, except for contagious diseases like where people are taken to leprosarium, for example, like people that suffer leprosy. There's no reason why any person should be segregated against because the person is disabled. Why should you involve people because they are disabled to solicit for alms? Some of them bring out oozing sores that are unsightly, displaying them on the streets so that they can get alms. People walking with the lame, the blind, and the hunchbacks so as to get public pity and solicit for alms. It is not just mental degradation of those people, but you are also dehumanizing them without knowing it, because you are letting the people know more and more that they are not like other people, that they are objects to solicit for alms from more able-bodied persons. That should never happen again. Participation in politics and public life, how much of it do we allow? How much of it do we allow? You all know it is not done. I can't see how many disabled people mount the soapbox asking for votes. Certificate of disability, I've also seen it in the Edo state law that you are to have such a certificate, either of permanent disability or a temporary one, and that anyone who procures it or who issues it is liable to a fine and imprisonment. So I talked a lot about the dimension of challenges faced by PWDs, people suffering with disability in public places, even within the family circle, where they are believed. A lot of families believe that they are taboos, that they are witches and wizards, or that they are disabled because of a curse placed, or an ancestral curse placed on the person. They give their name callings based on negative beliefs and misconceptions, structural limitations. They cannot access adequate healthcare and other educational facilities. In schools, they are stared at. They are shunned. They are not allowed to ask questions. There are no assist devices to help these people, even in schools. Physical needs are not provided for, even by families. The family that is supposed to be a haven of peace for these people is no longer such a haven. And because also the society even shuns such family. When you want to marry, they will say, have you checked the family very well? Is it not that family that has two blind people? That thing could be genetic. Didn't you see one lame person there? Don't you know that they are lame people? So the family is discriminated against. Because of that, the family turns it against the innocent disabled person. The deaf children, they suffer this. And it is because of these retrogressive cultural beliefs. I've discussed them being seen as a burden to be cared for. And family members quickly remove that oxygen from them because they feel they are helpless. And this helpless family made these people to so see themselves as object of pity that they begin to develop or have what you call family or domestic violence being visited on them. Wives are literally raped by their husbands who do not care whether they are in need of that sexual intercourse at that moment, because after all, the husband is going to help her later to go to the urinal or to go out. Some get angry enough, they take the clutches and break them to pieces and say, let me see how you will move again. So that domestic violence is there. particularly which is gender-based. And then because of this impact of sustained abuse, they begin to develop inferiority complex, having intellectual and cognitive disability. And guess what? They begin to suffer what you call the Stockholm syndrome. The Stockholm syndrome is a syndrome where the servant or the tormented or the slave begins to see the tormentor or the slave owner as his best friend. And he now leans towards him for help with love. So when day breaks, under Stockholm syndrome, the slave will call the master, good morning, sir. You have forgotten, you have not slapped me this morning. Here's my face to be slapped. After being slapped, he will lie on the ground and say, sir, don't forget to match me to walk on me when you are going out. We call it the Stockholm syndrome. He has been so berated that he now falls in love with the traducer. I've looked at this from every angle: educational environment, social environment, the schools, in terms of also the school curriculum, which does not take care of their special needs. And as I round up, having braille material, textbooks designed for them, special CDs and flash drives. The sexual molestation, when they are being helped, maybe on the stairs, the people who are helping them are touching them in their private parts. And the disabled person, young lady, cannot say anything. So I conclude that we should not treat them like this as outcasts. The same way Stanley once treated these people of Russia. You know what he told these people? He said, for you to govern a people well and torment them, you first of all have to deprive them, put them under severe deprivation. He said, I will give you an example. He asked for a fowl, a chicken. They brought the fowl. He started plucking out the feathers of the fowl one by one. The fowl was bleeding and croaking. He was plucking out the feathers one by one. The fowl was bleeding. The whole body of the fowl was blood-soaked. And then he said, watch me. He dropped the fowl on the ground. The fowl started dawdling away in pains and agony. Then he put hands, Stanley dipped hands in his pocket and brought out some grain of corn and called out to the same fowl. And that same fowl that had just run away from the tormentor because of the agony and pains came back to Stanley, who bent down with his palm and started feeding from his palm again. That is what our governments have done to the people of this country. They so punish you that when you are going for election, they are going for election, they give you 2,000 to 10,000 naira to buy your 4 years ahead. And because you are poor, you take that mudu of rice or mudu of gari or mudu of salt, which is a Greek gift. We should not fall for it. And that is what they want the slave people, people with disabilities to solve. So the recommendations here, a lot of them are already in this Edo state law. As I round up, any actions or activities that will invade the personalities, dignity, and life of people with disabilities should be severely denounced and discontinued. Government should design policies to combat all forms of abuse and discriminatory practices against the PWDs by undertaking the effective and appropriate measures aimed at raising awareness throughout the country. Page 23 of 24 for those who have the paper. Family members should develop a strong love for those with one disability form or the other, with the assumption that no one is free from health challenges which can render one dependent on others for survival. Where one broomstick is alone, you break it easily. But when you bunch them together, it becomes difficult, impossible to break. So when we bunch together with our disabled persons, together we will all be happy. Both governments and NGOs should help in the provision of assistive devices, skills, and training needed by the PWDs in schools to enable them to participate actively and equally like every other student. Policy that would prioritize the education of these people should be formulated and implemented. Security personnel and other key shareholders should be well trained to detect unreported exploitation and abuse of PWDs in schools and at home. Where it is observed that the rights of these people are infringed, individuals in the community should take it as a responsibility to report such cases to appropriate authorities for swift action to be taken. Laws criminalizing discrimination and segregation against these PWDs should be strictly enforced. Strictly enforced. Public and social institutions and organizations that fail to accord PWDs special treatment as provided for by our laws like this Edo State law should be severely sanctioned. And finally, laws should be amended to insist that at every public function, there must be a sign interpreter, whether or not there is presence of people who are in need of an interpreter, such as deaf persons. There must be one. And remember, as I go to my seat, that all of us are disabled in one form or the other. But that if we want to be free people, we should remove that DIS from that disable. Then we'll become able. By the grace of God, all of us are able. God bless you all.